This is a review for Riverdale, Chapter 3, Body Double. Okay, so a lot happened this episode, but the most important thing about tonight's is we have Barb. Barb from Stranger Things is in Riverdale. Okay, it's not the same character. It's the actress who played her, Shannon Purser. And she's playing a character called Ethel Muggs, who's this sort of wallflower-like character. It's almost the same character as Barb, really. Okay, so she ties into this episode because Veronica goes on a date with this guy, Chuck, who is the son of the football coach, and also he's the star quarterback, Mr. Popularity, who everyone thinks is just an absolute dreamboat. But turned out he's just a complete pig who, despite all, the only thing him and Veronica do on their days make out, he, tells them that they performed a sticky maple. And if you don't know what a sticky maple is, you're better off not knowing. But if you're that curious, Google it on Urban Dictionary. I did that. Could have done without that. Anyway, he says that he gave her a sticky maple, slut-shaming her, and this pisses off Veronica. Veronica wants to get revenge, and, she finds out that Chuck has been, lying about his conquest for a while. There's all these, she gets together with Betty because, Veronica wants revenge. Betty starts asking around, and, of course, that's when we're introduced to Ethel, who was another victim of his, who all she did was talk to the guy, and then he starts talking about how they got it on in the library. So they decide they're going to get revenge on Chuck, and revenge they do get. They set him up where they get him in the hot tub, and he thinks he's going to have a threesome with Betty and Veronica, but Betty handcuffs him into the hot tub and starts raising the heat levels, getting him to confess that he was lying about everything, and there's a book that talks about all the conquest of all, this football team. It's this game that the football team was playing where they were, scoring with the chicks. They would actually have actual scores for them. And, Chuck was involved, and Jason Blossom, the kid who got killed, was involved. This came as a shock to his sister, Cheryl. He was like, how come you wouldn't tell me about this? And, this is a side of him she didn't know about, which I thought was interesting. Also, of course, I'm guessing he probably told the football team, hey, don't be messing around with my sister. Anyway, they get revenge on Chuck. They start turning up the heat. He starts confessing, the whole thing was a lie, and then Betty starts flipping out, thinking that he's Jason, because she's thinking she's Polly or something like that, and she's like pushing his head down underwater with the heel of her high heels, and then so that gets exposed in the newspaper, and then Chuck and his buddies get kicked off the football team, and Jughead says this is going to play in later. There's going to be repercussions from that. Okay, so that's one storyline. Another one was Archie getting into trouble with his dad. And I'm on his dad's side because Archie goes and tells that he heard a gunshot on the 4th of July weekend. And then his dad's like, well, you lied to me about where you were on the 4th of July weekend, and now you're part of this murder investigation. Of course, Archie isn't going to say he was fucking the music teacher, but it's about my music, Dad. His dad grounds him, but then he gets because he had told the sheriff that he heard this gunshot, this clears Cheryl, who had also heard the gunshot when her and her brother were going down to the riverside, because he was going to fake his death. I was right about that. Last week I put out a theory that he faked his own death, and I have more on that theory at the end of this video. And she sets it up with him and the Pussycats because, seeing how she owes him a favor, she said she was willing to do anything, as long as it didn't involve her body. So, what's he going to want then, But he decides he's going to have some music lessons with Josie and the Pussycats and hangs out with them. It's nice to see them having more than just them putting on a concert, even though in this episode, once again, Josie and the Pussycats, they got a gig. and it's all about the music with them. Nothing else, just the music. So, Archie goes to that because they played his song, or he added some lyrics to one of theirs. Yeah, I didn't care. I like when Archie, him and Mrs. Grundy. That's an interesting enough story. And then you got, who will we go with, Betty or Veronica? Well, his music. Oh, every time he says, I want to play my music, I'm just eyes rolling. Yeah. Aside from that, not a lot of other stuff happened, except Betty's mother got the shit slapped out of her because she's at this little shindig at the mayor's place. Then she runs into the Blossoms, the parents, Jason and Cheryl. She starts talking smack to the mother. The mother just whack, slaps her across the face. Of course, this bitch doesn't learn anything. Later, she goes and starts talking shit to Veronica's mother about how Veronica's the slut who got the sticky maple. And it's like, bitch, you already got slapped once. But yeah, I don't like Betty's mother one bit. She got slapped. I was like, yeah! And Jughead's digging around. Y'all can do Dilton Doily, the scoutmaster who found Cheryl on the 4th of July weekend. And we find out that he was the one who fired that shot. He's hanging out with his Boy Scouts, and he's an avid survivalist, so he's, showing them how to shoot a gun. I'm like, oh, that's the end of that mystery. Of course, this leads to Jughead blackmailing Dilton, saying, hey, well, did you see anything on the 4th of July? And then he confesses that he saw Mrs. Grundy's car, and that's it. So, yeah, I thought it was a decent episode. They slowly move the murder conspiracy along. We got to see Betty and Veronica get revenge on Chuck. Betty's mom got slapped. And aside from, Archie, my music. It was a good episode. Now let's get into theories. So last week I said that I thought Jason had faked his own death. That's what him and Cheryl were doing on the river that day. And that turned out to be true. Now, his reason for that, Cheryl didn't know, but I'm thinking it's because he wanted to be with Polly. And when they introduced Polly a little later on, that's when we're going to find out that he was going to run off and elope with Polly and start a new life. Although I'm beginning to wonder, is there a Polly? Because Betty was thinking she was Polly tonight. So maybe there's something there where Betty was always Polly, and there never was a Betty. Also, I'm thinking that book that they had that listed all the conquests of the football team, they burned that way too quickly. Because I'm thinking that book might have tied in to whoever killed Jason. Because I think Polly was probably not the only heart that he broke. Like, there was some other chick that he screwed and then screwed over. And, if they had read the book, they would have known about that. Like, maybe it's Mrs. Grundy, maybe Ethel. But my number one suspect for Jason's murder is going to be Hank Cooper, Betty's father. And I'll tell you why. So when they reveal the killer, I think it's going to be someone that, an established character. It's not going to be someone they introduce in the next to last episode before they introduce the killer. And even though they haven't done a lot with her father, you've seen him. You've seen him in the first episode, you saw him in the second episode. And the reason I think he's my number one is he's the most likely character you could just kind of write off of the show and you wouldn't have to worry about him. Because so far that's the way it's been. He's just been like a tertiary or third character. He's not even been like a supporting character. He's just, Betty has a father and he's it. So that's why I'm thinking he's my number one suspect, because he's someone they could get rid of and it wouldn't be any problem. Like her mother, I think they're going to keep her around for a couple seasons because she's a total bitch and, it plays into Betty's psyche and whatnot. But her father, we haven't seen him. So that's why I'm thinking right now my number one suspect is Betty's father.